Hey, what's up guys, Still City Dashcam here. I'm just here to do a little review on the Ainhyzic 1080p Dashcam. So, just a couple basic things about it. It has a 3-inch screen. It is mounted by a suction cup and is best for mounting on a window, in my experience. And it supposedly, I say supposedly because I just have not gone into the specs of this yet in a demonstration, but it supposedly has night vision, G sensors, loop recording, and a parking monitor, as well as auto recording, which is a feature that I like a lot. So, let me go into those. So, it does record 1080p, and it is, I don't know how HD I'd call it. I will obviously be including clips here. I'm no expert, but the camera quality, in my opinion, is more than good enough for a mid-range dash cam. Has a 3-inch screen, and it records at a camera angle of 170 degrees. So, yeah, more than the camera I currently use. I actually personally will not be using this as a front camera. I am using this as a cabin camera facing the rear to cover all the stuff in my back seat, as well as out the back windows in case of a rear end collision or a side swipe. So, that being said, let's go into some of the other specs. So, it does, in fact, have decent night vision. I will try to include a clip here. It's not perfect, but you can see what's going on. You're going to have some trouble picking out a plate, but all in all, it records clear enough that you can see what's going on, and in a lot of cases, that ends up being all you actually need. It does have a G sensor. I will say it is pretty sensitive, even when you set it to low, especially if you're like me and originally had it mounted on the tailgate of an SUV that closes. Closing that tailgate often sets off the G sensor, and it'll record and lock the footage, which isn't that big of a deal, but I'll get into the loop recording later, but it can cause some issues with that. The G sensor, however, if you get into a crash, is definitely going to register. I can promise you that. So it also has, as I mentioned, loop recording. So basically, you can have it set to not loop record, which means once the memory card is full, it's full. You have to erase it. Or every 1, 3, or 5 minutes, it will it'll split up into the next clip, and then when it is full, it'll overwrite the oldest clip. This obviously has its ups and downs. If you're trying to keep all the footage, that means you have to kind of keep track of when it's going to fill up so that you can take out the SD card and put a new one in, or, obviously wipe it and put another one in. I do not believe it can handle larger than a 32 gigabyte SD card. I haven't tried, but I'm not seeing, they don't have any specs anywhere on it, so I could not tell you for sure. That being said, it does use any old, but it doesn't mention a write speed either, but just use one of these guys. Hopefully it'll focus. There you go. And this has been more than enough for me. The two issues that come up with loop recording is obviously if you have the G sensor and the parking monitor on and it keeps being triggered, for example, if the parking monitor keeps going off while you're in a parking lot, it can fill up. And when it fills up, obviously it won't write over itself, which will lead you to either need to take the SD card out and erase the footage from a computer, or reformat the SD card, which automatically wipes it all. Which, by the way, your SD card will need to be formatted right off the bat, so make sure nothing you want is on it before you format it. The other issue is if you set it to, for example, 1 minute recording, you can have a lot of instances where if you need footage, it can get broken up, which isn't that big of a deal, but that is just something to keep in mind. The other issue I notice is when you set it to never loop record, it'll auto default the storage space it takes to the storage it would take for a 30-minute video. So if it records for 5 minutes, it's taking the same space in this dash cam as a 30-minute video. And the same happens at the smaller intervals. So if you have it at a 5-minute interval, it's going to take up the same space for every clip. I don't know why it does this. It must have something to do with it presets a block of data on the SD card, but That's just how it functions, so that is something to keep in mind. So setting it to 1 minute will allow you to get the most out of your SD card, but you have to keep in mind too that it may require more editing, especially if you're looking to edit clips from these, or if you're pulling clips from these often enough that you're finding it to be annoying. So the loop recording works. It works as advertised, but there are some flaws to keep in mind. The parking monitor, I have not personally tested, but in my experience with every cheaper dash cam I've used, it can, especially if you park, it's nice when you're parked in your garage or when you're parked outside your house and no one's walking by. But if you're parked in busy areas, it's probably going to trigger a lot, and you may find that to be a problem. And last but not least, my favorite feature that a decent dash cam has would be the auto recording. So this only really works if your car, when it is off, does not have power to the cigarette lighters. The car I learned to drive in, which was a 2008 Saturn Vue, did not have this feature. It kept power to the cigarette lighters when the car was turned off, so this would not work. However, in mine, I turn off the car, cigarette lighter's not getting power. Basically, when you turn the car on, the camera gets power, it automatically boots on and starts recording as normal. And when you turn the car off, after a certain amount of time, it'll turn off on its own. Now, just to speak one thing about the battery life on this when it is not plugged in. So, I do not have much experience with keeping it unplugged. However, later on in this clip, there is an example of a rear camera recorded from a Chevy S10, where I did not plug in the camera, and I drove about a minute with the camera unplugged and powered on, and the camera, the battery will show 3 bars. It was still showing 3 bars when I turned it off, so it, at the very least, can record when an incident happened and likely has the power to idle for a while without actually, without actually not being able to boot up when your car gets hit 12 hours after you parked it. So, I can't attest to it perfectly because I have not tested it fully, but it had enough battery life to record longer than any other cheaper dash cam I've used when not connected to power. Most of them lasted 30 seconds at most. This one, at the very least, lasted a minute and showed that it had a decent bit left to go. So, that being said, let's get into this a little bit. So, this is adjustable so that it can be angled facing like this. Excuse me. Facing where, what are words? Basically, you can angle it in almost any direction you need to, is what I'm trying to get at. I thought I had a better way of saying that, and I do not. Currently, I have it plugged in via an extra USB Type-C cable that it came with, and it is plugged into a wall adapter and just plugged into my power strip. It does come with a car charger that actually has another USB or another USB 3.0, I believe, or 2.0, that kind of USB port. For you to, if you have it plugged in the front of your car, to keep, to have something else plugged in with it. Now, I do not have, and nor will I attempt to give any advice or opinions as to how easy to hardwire this is, because I am not hardwiring this. Mine is mounted from the sunroof, and I just kind of have the wires routed in such a way that they're out of my way. I'm not going for crisp and clean, I just want it to work. But it is safe to assume that this is easily hardwireable, especially given the fact that the cable is relatively universal. You can realistically just buy a longer cable and buy another cigarette lighter USB adapter and plug it in wherever you want and wire it as long as you'd like. This does not come with a rear camera, so that is also something to keep in mind. You would have to buy 2 separate cameras. But let's power it on and let's get into it a little bit. So, on the side, we have power. We have a lock button, which basically means that when you're hitting these buttons, nothing's going to happen. This has to do with the menus, the M button. And OK is obviously a select, as well as you have your micro SD card slot here. You have an up, a down, and sort of a menu button. But that being said, let's actually power it on. Hopefully it'll behave. Hello? Hi-oh. Okay, it might not like the fact that I have it plugged in. It might want to just keep charging. So, let's unplug it. Power it on. There we go. You hear the characteristic noise that just made. And there's your picture. Now it has all the different icons for all the different general settings. You'll notice in the bottom right, I actually do not have an SD card in at the moment. It also does have a timestamp and a date stamp. You can also optionally have it set so that it displays your license plate. But let's go into the menus. So basically you can adjust the resolution. I keep it at 1080, but you can drop it to 720 if you need to record more space. This is where you can change the loop recording settings. You can turn on and off high def. You can adjust exposure, which I do because it's often in lower light situations for me, so I just want it to basically be brighter, if that makes sense. Motion detection, which I have off. You can set it to record or not record audio. I personally record it at all times because I don't care about my audio being recorded. You can obviously set the date, G-sensor, the parking guard. Here's where you can set a license plate if you want. And here's where you can change the date and time that it has. There's gotta be, I was gonna say. You can change the screensaver and how it works. You can make it, you can change the auto power off settings. You can change the frequency settings. You can turn off the beeps, which I did. They're annoyingly loud. That is the one little minor inconvenience. You can change the language. This is where once you put in an SD card, you'll have to format it. And if you have any other issues with the SD card, always try reformatting it first, as long as you don't have footage on there you don't want to lose, in which case, just put it in your computer and pull all the footage off of it and then reformat it. And then you can return it to default and get just basic information on the device. So, that being said, this is just pretty much how it works, and now I'm going to include a couple driving clips demonstrating the different scenarios, as well as just one other little bit of information.
is actually a really good example of how this records in the dark as well, because the camera is seeing it much brighter than I am right now, based off the screen. So, this is in my garage with the lights off and only my running lights on. This is with no lights on. My regular front dash cam actually is having more trouble seeing this than this camera is. Now, there is natural light getting in, but still, it sees better than my regular dash cam, which sees well at night. So, that is something to keep in mind here.
Now, one more thing worth adding. This is not the most inconspicuous dash cam out there. This is hidden pretty far up on my windscreen on the inside. If I go much higher, that dark weather stripping will alter how the video comes out. So that is also something to keep in mind, that this is not the easiest dash cam to hide. So that being said, when I purchased this camera, I purchased this camera for $40 on sale from, I believe, $60. Do I think it's worth it at $60? Honestly, I've had other cameras in that price range that were not nearly as good as this. So I would personally say yes. Would I buy it at the price I did? Definitely. It is so far stacked up to be a really good sub $50 dash cam. It's nothing out of this world, but it doesn't need to be. It does everything it should do, and it does it well enough to fit the average user. That being said, I cannot attest to anything such as durability. I know for a fact from putting it on my back window that it did not like staying on my back window because of the texture. Basically, I have these textured, it's like the rear defroster. It does not like sitting partially on those, so it didn't like staying. It took a good number of little tumbles before I stopped putting it there, and it has held up fine. So in terms of that kind of a durability standpoint, it has at least held up to some drops without any issue. But I cannot attest to long-term durability, what might break. The mechanism that works the suction and also works the basically the movement of the camera is plastic. It seems to be a decently thick plastic, but it is something to keep in mind that where there's plastic, there could eventually be breaks. So be prepared to potentially have to have it serviced if something breaks, or replacing the suction mount if it really comes to it, which I don't know how intuitive that is on this camera, but that is something to weigh into your choices as well. So that being said, thanks for checking this out. Hopefully this is a very informative video for you, and hopefully this helps steer you in the right direction for whatever camera might fit your needs. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in whatever the next video is. Thanks.